Again, I want to take this opportunity as the chair to apologize for the technical difficulties and appreciate the patience of everyone who had to sit out for an hour. We do have one change to the agenda. Brigadier General Cruz has canceled for today. He will reschedule for September. So we will move to the next item on our presentation agenda today, which will be the Mississippi Headwaters Corridor Project, the Gilbert Lake Edition, presented by Tim Terrell from the Mississippi Headwaters Board and Mr. Bob McGillivray. So, Mr. McGillivray, I believe you can take the lead on this one.
Mr. Chairman, I think Tim Terrell was going to start the presentation, and then I would go second.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. As the chairman said, I'm Tim Terrell, Executive Director of the Mississippi Headwaters Board, and I have with me today Bob McGillivray, who is the project lead for the Trust for Public Land, and we are part of a partnership called the Mississippi Headwaters Habitat Corridor Project, and today we are here just for notification purposes only about a parcel of interest that the landowners have expressed interest in fee title acquisition. However, we are at a county board meeting, so if you choose that you have enough information present to make a decision, today, you are certainly welcome. But primarily, we are here for notification only. So with that, I will let Bob McGillivray start off.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for allowing us to present this matter to you this morning. I'm Bob McGillivray with the Trust for Public Land. I'm the Land Protection Director. And we're here today to give you information about a proposed 65-acre addition to the Gilbert Lake Aquatic Management Area. This land is just north of Brainerd, about a mile west of the Mississippi River, and our plan would be to purchase the property using legacy funding that we have through the Mississippi Headwaters Habitat Corridor Project. This is a partnership with the Mississippi Headwaters Board and Bowser. After we acquired the land, we would then donate it to the Minnesota DNR as an addition to the Gilbert Lake Aquatic Management Area, or AMA. This 65-acre piece of land is predominantly wooded and has high biodiversity significance. It would add over 1,000 feet of shoreline to the existing AMA. It would improve access to it and protect an important crappie and sunfish spawning area. It would also connect the existing AMA to the public access that is just to the east of the property. The land further borders the Paul Bunyan Trail, and people using the trail could walk down to the lake through this addition to the AMA as well. This project is supported by a great number of individuals. We have provided a letter of support from the Gilbert Lake Lake Association. And, oops, are you still seeing me? My screen just went black for a minute.
Yep, we see you.
Okay. We've submitted a letter of support from the Lake Association, and 64 people have signed that. The addition of this land to the AMA would provide great public recreational opportunities, in addition to providing significant habitat for fish, wildlife, and water quality. A great many people use this land, and it would provide great opportunities for people to fish from shore here. I'd also like to address the payment in lieu of taxes for this proposed addition, the PILT payments. Using the property's estimated appraised value, the estimated PILT payments would be at least $5,625 per year, and the current real estate taxes are only $2,370. So the acquisition of this property and conveyance into state ownership would be revenue positive for the county. And as Tim mentioned, as part of this partnership that we have with the Headwaters Board, one of the things that we strive to do is to reach out to counties early to let them know about projects that we're working on. And typically we go to a meeting of the whole, but recent meetings, committees of the whole have been very full, and so are some of the upcoming ones. So that's why we're here at a regular board meeting today. And in light of that, if you should choose to act on this matter today, that would be fine. Otherwise, we'd be happy to come back at the end of September or early October as well. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And we also have a representative from DNR Fisheries here as well, Mark Bacciagalughi.
Mr. McGillivray, looking at the map, is the section, can you define the acreage that you're looking at? Is it everything that's outlined in red, or is just a portion of that, the 65 acres that you're talking about?
Mr. Chairman, it is everything in red except there are 4 acres on the east side of the property that the landowner wants to keep. He's got a pole shed on that building, and he lives just to the east of the property, so there would be 4 acres carved off to the side, but the rest of it would be purchased. That's why, if you look on the map, you'll see that I think it totals 68.9 acres, but the landowner is going to keep approximately 4, so it'll be right around 65 acres that we would be acquiring.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Franzine, this is in your district, I believe. Have you heard from anybody out there?
I've actually been out on a boat ride looking at this property with people, with our county attorney. He lives out there too. And I think, you know, Mr. Sandberg is going to sell this property. I think it's a good acquisition. I would think that unless someone else has questions, I would like to make a motion at this time to just go ahead with the acquisition of this property. And I don't know how to phrase it, but if you would phrase it the way it needs to be, I think it's a great project, and like I said, Mr. Sandberg is going to sell it. We don't have any control over that. So if we could have it put into, you know, habitat for the Mississippi Headwaters Corridor project, I see nothing wrong with that. It will bring in more money to the county than it does now. So I think it's a win-win for the county on this one. So I would like to make that motion.
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Franzine to move forward, and is it appropriate to say encourage purchasing or to purchase this property or sell it? What do we have?
It says a
here?
title fee acquisition of 65 properties to convey to the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources to be managed as an aquatic management area. I suppose that has to be in there somehow.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that it is to grant consent for the purchase. We're not going to become the owner of the property.
No, the DNR will be.
So it's just a requirement that Crow Wing County consider the purchase and express an opinion.
Okay, so we'll put that in the motion. The seconder is comfortable with that?
Yeah, can I say something?
Absolutely, Commissioner Coring.
We're consenting, but even if we don't consent, that doesn't mean anything on this, correct, Mr. Houle?
I'm not sure about this particular statute, but typically with an AMA, I would suggest it probably could still go forward without the board's consent, but I haven't reviewed that specific statute.
Mr.
Chair.
Mr. Chairman, if
Mr. Chair, could I ask that question?
Just one second. Tim, Bob was in first, so let's allow him to go first.
If I could just speak to that issue, there is not a legal requirement for county board approval, but it is our policy as part of this partnership with the Mississippi Headwaters Board that we will not go forward with an acquisition if the county board of the county where the land is located does not approve it or consent to the acquisition. So it's not a legal requirement, but we want to work with the 8 counties in the Headwaters region, and we will not go forward with the acquisition unless you approve or consent to it.
Thank you for that clarification. Commissioner Coring?
I just want to make sure my position is clear. I'm supporting this today because they're giving it to the DNR, and Crow Wing County residents will receive PILT payment in lieu of taxes. So What I am opposed to is other groups that are buying property and then wanting to convey it to Crow Wing County, and then it comes off the tax rolls, and they're putting their stipulations on what cannot happen on that property, and I don't agree with that.
Understood.
And I think if anybody on this board thinks that's a good idea, they're totally wrong, because then you don't have any confidence in our land services department in the managing that we're doing of 105,000 acres. So now we got a patchwork of property all over the county. You can do this here, but you can't do that there. I don't believe in that. And then once this land is off the tax rolls, all the citizens of Crow Wing County are having to put the bill for it, but they can't enjoy it to the way they can enjoy the rest of the property in. But I do support this because we're going to receive payment in lieu of taxes, so that's why. I don't know
Okay.
if that made any sense.
I understand your position. So we have a motion and a second to give consent to the purchase of this property and deeding it over to DNR. So I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Franzine,
Yes.
Commissioner Coring,
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken,
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. That passes. And thank you very much. Appreciate your patience and time today. So look
Thank
forward
you
to
all
that
very
addition.
much.
Thank you all. Thanks.
So next on our agenda is the DNR Greenwood Lake Tax Forfeit parcel acquisition, and I'm going to not attempt to say this gentleman's last name. So
Bacigalupi.
Mark, I will allow you to take over and present.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Board, for your time today. That last name is Bacigalupi. I'm the Fisheries Area Supervisor here with the Minnesota DNR. I thank you for your action on that Gilbert Lake property. This is a similar but slightly different acquisition that we're seeking here. And Therese, I don't know if the map is up for display, but I think that would help while I'm speaking about this.
It will be in 1 second.
Okay.
Well, maybe a little more than one.
Yep. In 2019, this is a Crow Wing County tax-forfeited property that was requested to go on a sale list or auction list in 2019. At the time that I saw that, we just requested a 6-month pause in the sale of that property. We had just acquired the land on the north side in 2018, an action for which I came before the board in that time period, and it was approved at that time. And so the proposed sale of the county tax forfeit land would was not as consistent with the preservation activities that we had just been able to accomplish the year before. The county appraised value for the 60 acres of county tax forfeit land was $147,000. The DNR appraisal for that property was $200,000. We are proposing to buy the property for that sum of money. The funds identified for this project, working with the Nature Conservancy, is $200,000 in the form of Reinvest in Minnesota private sector critical habitat match dollars, and that does require county board approval for advancing the project and to use those funds. Here's the map of the project. This is in, my screen went black.
Yep. Hold on.
There it is. This is in Mission Township, and it is just northeast of Big Pelican Lake. It is just north of Sandbar or Horseshoe Lake. and it's again 60 acres. Working with Ryan Simonson on this project, it seems like a win-win. The property was logged, or timber was harvested on the south half of the property in 2018, and the PILT payments, I'm told, would remain at $2 per acre, which is the current rate at which the state is paying for county tax forfeit land. This time I would just open the, we are asking for a resolution, we submitted a template example, and this time I could just open it for questions.
So Mark, there would be a purchase price of $200,000, and then each year there'd be the PILT payment of $120 for that piece of property at $2 per acre?
Correct.
And I believe, is this in your district, Commissioner Hoag?
Yeah.
Have you heard anything, any feedback on this one?
I've heard nothing. But I do have a question. What would be the allowable uses for this property if this were to move forward?
We want to continue to allow hunting and trapping on the property. The one change from the county tax forfeit rules would be to restrict motorized use on the property, and that would be the major change. I did speak with 2 neighboring landowners to the property that have a narrow strip of land between the cul-de-sac or the road, public road, and the 60 acres county property, and they were supportive of the state maintaining this in public ownership and working with them on not trespass, but allowable uses and continued use of the property in the way that it has been used.
Is there any, what is the DNR's issue with motorized use in some of these parcels? I don't understand. I just don't understand that.
Yeah. I think we're prioritizing the habitat value of the property and fish and wildlife values at the very highest point, so that it's just to minimize the disturbance in different seasons for nesting and for at critical time periods of animals' lives to minimize disturbance. And then it creates a variety of users. Some vehicles can be leave an impact on the land, and we're minimizing that.
Thank you.
So currently, Mark, or Mr. B, I'll call you, are there trails on there? There's probably logging trails, I would assume, or roads that currently exist on there, and are they being used by motorized recreational vehicles at this time?
I believe there's some history of limited use. There is a family of hunters that have used that property, and they may just use the ATVs to retrieve game. The loggers have blocked after they logged, they kind of blocked the pathway through there that the private landowners granted access through. And I believe that's a safety procedure that is common, because the harvested land has a variety of kind of hazards for if you're moving through there at a high rate of speed.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, Commissioner Coring.
So the last one that we did, when it's bought from a private owner and the DNR is going to have it, I think the PILT payment is like $5,000 a year. So what's up with this $2 an acre? That seems kind of low to me. I mean, is that in statute? That you'd only pay $2 an acre for tax forfeit land when you take it over? Can you hear me?
County administrator might be able to comment further on this, but it's my understanding that the state pays the counties $2 per acre on county tax forfeited land, and we would, in a purchase, situation like this, we would continue to pay that same rate.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Coring, members, there are probably 6 to 10 different methods of calculating payment in lieu of taxes. It matters how the property was acquired, if it went tax forfeited versus it was acquired by the DNR and fee title. The highest rate of PILT is for land that is acquired fee title from a private owner. The lowest rate that we get in PILT, I believe, is for tax forfeited property. So there's different rates, and which rate you're paid makes a substantial difference when compared to the property taxes that a parcel could generate.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Gary a question?
Yes, you may.
Gary, on this property, it's, market value is $200,000 from what I understand. What would the taxes be on this if it was sold to an individual rather than this acquisition?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Franzine, I'd have to go and do the math on that and see what, I think our value was 147, or the county's value. The DNR appraiser came in at 200,000. So we would be looking at 147,000 of value from a tax-based standpoint. Just a little bit of clarification. Tim is spot on. There are numerous different ways to calculate PILT. The main determining factor is acquisition. To the prior acquisition, I didn't read the documents myself. Typically in that situation, you'll receive the high payment for anywhere from 5 to 10 years, and then it goes into the rest of the bucket. Usually is how those work, but I didn't verify that on the last one, but I believe that's probably how that will work as well.
So Gary, if I can just add on to that, are there any formal trails going across this property at this time, whether they're snowmobile or ATV? Any motorized trails going across here?
Mr. Chair, I look back to Ryan. He is shaking his head no. We have no formal trails or designated trails on this property currently. This was one I believe we were going to potentially sell, because it doesn't fit well with our forestry #1 guiding principle, if you will. And we did log it here just a couple of years ago.
Commissioner Hoag?
Garrett, you might have just answered my question, but what kind of revenue do we see off the harvest of this parcel? Would you
We'll have Ryan answer.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Hoag, I don't know exact numbers on the revenue, but for timber sales in general, you could say $500 or $600 per acre is a good average revenue for that. And
Okay,
I'd also like to add that this property is landlocked. There's no legal public access. There certainly technically is hiking or walking access from the state land to the north. But otherwise, there is no legal access for the public currently, so.
thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? So as noted, we need a motion on this, if it's going to go forward or not go forward. So I would look for a motion at this time to approve the resolution that's attached to the Greenwood Lake Tax Forfeit Parcel Acquisition.
Mr. Chair, given the fact that there's currently no trail systems, again, I do have issues with some of the stipulations that the DNR puts on these parcels, but given the fact that this has no current and probably no future opportunities, some of these parcels do make sense to move forward on, so I would make that motion to move forward.
Commissioner Hoag makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken seconds the motion. Any other discussion? A roll call vote then. Commissioner Coring,
No.
Commissioner Franzine,
Yes.
Commissioner Hoag,
Yes.
Commissioner Brecken.
Yes.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Mr. B?
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the grooming of the cross-country ski trails. Commissioner Hoag.
Okay, well, I've, as we recall, this issue of grooming the Larson Lake and Wolf Lake Trail Systems was discussed in a budget meeting. And since that time, I've had the opportunity to meet with the ski clubs and speak with several people that utilize those trails. And I thought that it at least earned enough attention to bring it back to the board for a revisit and discussion amongst the members. At that time, we discussed this. I think Gary presented a couple pieces of equipment that would be purchased out of our forestry fund, non-levy dollars, and it appeared that we exited the grooming of these trail systems completely. So I wanted to revisit those, bring it back to the board for discussion. The ski club has made a proposal for funding that they would need to continue to maintain these two trail systems. And I don't think we've had an official discussion of that as well. So I thought we would again bring it back to the board. I did, if we look at our recreational plan, which I don't know, Teresa, if we want to put this on the screen, but page 37 does state, part of our mission is to not just summer trails, but winter trails as well. Cross-country skiing is spelled out specifically in that. And I wanted to also make note that, we do several similar fundings for recreational activities like this. Some come to mind as the Milford Mine Project, the Fire Tower in Pequot Lakes, the Raleigh Johnson, I believe, is another funding source for these dollars. So with that, I wanted to bring it back. I know we have some folks joining us today that wanted to speak towards this as well. So I would leave it at that, and if we could maybe hear some from the public and take questions.
So is there somebody online that would like to address this issue?
Yes, this is Bill Meyer.
Go
Mr.
ahead, Bill.
Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I've been a resident of the county for 41 years, living in Nisswa. The ski club has been around actually before I got here, and we've been grooming trails at the Arboretum, French Rapids, and Forest View, the middle school, for around 30 years or thereabouts. We have a lot of experience working with grooming. We have a lot of equipment. It's all in good shape. We have the equipment necessary to groom both Larson and Wolf Lake. We're familiar with the state grant program. We actually use a bigger part of that with the areas we do than put the portion that would be assigned to Larson Lake that the county has used in the past, which is about $4,000 roughly. So we've looked hard we know exactly over the years how much it costs us to groom. We've looked hard at the Larson Lake and Wolf Trails, and we've come to the conclusion that it will cost the ski club to do a decent job there of grooming once a week, plus a few extra times for heavy snowfalls. That will cost us roughly $9,000. So there's about a $5,000 shortage between the amount of the state grant and the amount that it's going to cost the ski club if we were to take on the project. Everybody still with me?
Yep.
Okay. So what we're essentially looking at before we take on the project, if we call it, which we have the equipment, or we can attain that very quickly. We have a possible driver, so we're set to move forward this winter if needed. but we still have this $5,000 gap that would be continuing on off into the future. So what we're looking for is a dependable source of income, to cover that difference in cost.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this issue?
If I could, please. My name is Tiffany Knapp, and I've skied since I was 12. I'm a mom of 4 skiers, and I coach the middle school ski team, and I'm also part of the ski board. And I want to express to you how important I believe skiing is to our community. I think it's vital to the well-being of the citizens of Crow Wing County. So many people move to this area because we enjoy recreating. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, recreating and being outside, and skiing is one of the ways that we can be outside in the winter. I did a little bit of research, and the University of Minnesota said that 10% of Minnesotans suffer from seasonal affect disorder or winter blues. The treatments that they listed are natural daylight and 30 minutes of being outside every day. Skiing is going to meet that. Another thing I've thought about is childhood obesity. 18.5% of children in the United States fall under the obese category. That's 13.7 million children. That's 10 times higher than 1975. And obesity is linked to 40% of cancers and a multitude of other health issues. Skiing is also an antidote to obesity. It gets our kids moving at a time when there's little else to do. On the middle school and high school teams, we have 120 to 130 skiers. We provide these kids with equipment for their first year. The only thing they need to buy is boots, and we teach them how to ski. And we have created a program that has allowed kids to try this and then to become lifelong skiers. For my personal family, for myself and my daughter, skiing can wipe out stress and anxiety in our lives. If I'm getting tense, my husband will be like, you need to go ski. You need to go get outside. There's something about exercising with your sun on the face in the winter, surrounded by the beauty that the ski trails offer, that is just soothing to the soul. And I think that's why so many cross-country skiers are so passionate about skiing. So Wolf Lake is a place that we always bring our friends who've never skied before, because it's not a part of the state trails, and so it doesn't require a ski pass. So we just borrow our friends' equipment and we take them out and we let them try it and see what they think. And often they become skiers as well. Larson Lake is a more challenging course. When we go, I usually take the shortcut and my kids take the more difficult trails. And it's just a great place to ski as a family. The high school uses it on Saturdays for practice because it offers them a little more challenge and prepares them for the intensity of their competitions that they experience. Both of these trails are closer to the east side of Crow Wing County, and as recreation in the Cuyuna Lakes area increases, there's more B&Bs there, there's more people traveling there. I think these two trails are a great opportunity for people to use these recreational areas in the winter as well. I've bumped into people from across the state that come up here to ski when we have snow and they don't. So it brings money into our county. The county has supported these trails for 40 years, and we're just asking that you would help us to continue to keep these trails a viable part of the ski opportunities that we have here in Crow Wing County. I really appreciate your time and your willingness to listen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do think that this is a financial component, and we are in the process of looking at our budget for next year, and I think that it would be important that we not make a decision on this today, that we have a discussion at a future meeting to look at this, but I think this has to be part of the budget discussion that we might have. Commissioner Franzine.
And Mr. Chair, we have had 2 other meetings, 2 Natural Resource Advisory Committee meetings where a lot of these people showed up and we did discuss this. But I would like you to take time to let our Land Services Director talk, because I have spoken to him and he has another idea. And I think it's important that we hear that.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Soring?
So those 2 Natural Resources Advisory Committee, which I believe Commissioner Hoag is on, was he in attendance to those meetings?
No, he wasn't at either one.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me any.
Well, I'm going to say as the chair that at these meetings, we need to show respect for one another at every opportunity.
You didn't show
Yeah, we
respect
don't
for
need
me
to.
when you removed me as the chair. I'd like to know what the reason is. What is the reason? Bill, what is the reason?
At
It's
this time,
retribution. It's
Commissioner
retribution
Coring?
because I'm supporting somebody else.
Commissioner
And
Coring,
that's what it is.
you are out of line.
I'm not out of line.
We'll be back. We are on an agenda.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Franzine, you'd like to hear from,
I would like to hear from our
Gary?
Land Services Director, and he is up at the microphone.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Franzine, this has been, yeah, it's a great topic, I think, living in Crow Wing myself, it's a wonderful area to go and recreate. The issue here was, when we went to the Budget Committee a few months ago, it really was, our equipment was wore out. It was tired, and we needed to either upgrade or do something different. And at the time when the board decided to take the course of not doing the grooming anymore, we did see that as, hey, great, the resources that we expend there, we definitely aren't short of work. We could put them somewhere else. So that was a good thing. In looking at this maybe a little bit more broad, if you will, you have Larson Lake. It's 7.2 miles of trail. Wolf Lake is 5.6, basically. The grant and aid from the state of Minnesota is only $4,000 that we already said we were going to give the ski club for Larson, which is 7.2 miles. And so they're looking for, the difference of, about $5,000 for 2 miles less of trail. So it's like, just something to consider. Do you want to pay more per mile than the state of Minnesota does? But my little pitch here is this, in thinking of this and trying to make a better land services department and where we need resources, our traffic, at the landfill and in our parks that we already have obviously spike really high in the summertime. And that's where you'll hear from people like me going, we need help or we need resources to do a lot of customer service that we like to pull off. One of the little things that maybe you would like to consider is potentially re-looking at our HHW technicians, maybe more of an environmental type of technician that we can flex these folks from the landfill to our parks. We could take on the grooming, and we can do this all without any cost to our customers in this county and make our department even stronger with a higher level of customer service. So that's a little bit of something maybe to consider, other than just, should we do it or shouldn't we? Should we look at this a little bit more broader and actually strengthen our customer service while delivering for, for this group and, of course, all of our citizens of the county? So, any questions with that?
Gary, I do have one question, because our previous equipment was old and we're dispensing of that. If we were to reconsider these HHW employees, would we then, and we take care of these trails, are we going to purchase new equipment to groom these trails?
Mr. Chair, that would be the plan. I guess the beauty of it is we wouldn't be interested in buying a very specialized snowmobile just to do grooming of a ski trail. We would look at more of a utility vehicle that we can use not only in the winter, we can use it year-round for the sale of timber, showing loggers potential sites, using it at the landfill. We have kind of a, not the best ideal setup right now at the landfill where our HHW building is, where our recycling program is. So we would look at equipment that isn't just going to sit 6-8 months out of the year, that we can utilize year-round.
Two things then, Gary. First of all, you would still have to purchase a grooming machine to pull behind the machine you're talking about, correct?
Yes, correct, Mr. Chair. It would be more of, we were envisioning more of a UTV or a side-by-side with tracks on, if you will, to pull the grooming sled, if you will. So not a groomer per se, but yes, it would be the workhorse.
Well, to rephrase it, we would still have to buy that grooming apparatus that would attach to the side-by-side that you're,
That's correct.
okay. So that there are two pieces of equipment that we would be looking at. The second thing I wanted to say was I think this deserves further discussion, and I think we're getting into the weeds here today, and I think that we should have this take place at a future meeting. I would entertain, I want to just say one quick thing, Commissioner Franzine, and I'll get to you, is that I'd like to see the people for and against this to be able to have an opportunity to send us. I know we've heard from a lot of them in our emails, but I would like a formal way of collecting that data and then scheduling this for a future, whether it's board meeting or come to committee of the whole meeting, so that we can actually flesh out what the items are that we're going to have to consider with respect to our budget for 2021. Commissioner Franzine.
With that, I would like to make a motion to table this until Gary brings us a report, whether it be at a committee of the whole or some other meeting. And then you also said you want time for public comment. After we get that report, then I think we should have the public comment period.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor to table until Gary can present us with a complete look at the costs and impacts to us, and seconded by Commissioner Coring. Any other discussion?
Non-debatable.
I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Tabled until a future meeting, and with respect to Gary getting us a more detailed report. So thank you, everyone. Concerning the cross-country trails, we're now going to move on to the shooting range proposal on tax-forfeited land. Again, Commissioner Hoag.
On this particular one, I think we left this at the last meeting with some questions regarding lease and a few other questions that some of the board members had, and I believe we are now in a position to maybe share some of the lease details. Tim, do you have that information? Again, I think we're looking for a motion to either move forward with this, knowing there still may be a couple items that we got to work out. I know that there's some question with Minnesota Power and Light that needs to be addressed prior to approval. I believe there's maybe, I think the Conservation Club is hesitant of hiring their architectural firm to do design unless they know that this has got the support of the board. So with that, Tim, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, members, at Commissioner Hoag's request, I did meet with members of the Conservation Club to work out some potential lease terms, and it is just potential. I think the club needs to work out the power line easement with Minnesota Power. They also need to work out conditional use permit requirements with the city of Trommeled and Irondale Township. I think what they need from us is, if you're going to say no, that it's not possible here, then they would like you to tell them no if it's not possible here. I don't think they're looking for you to approve a lease agreement. You have a draft that is not ready in your packet so that you can see that it's moving forward, but it's not yet ready. What I would suggest they're looking for is really just conceptual approval of whether or not a lease will be possible at this location. I think they have to work out with Minnesota Power whether Minnesota Power will consider the same. Until you have an answer to that question, I would suggest we don't need to entertain the lease. But as soon as they get an answer to that question, if it is that Minnesota Power can work through that, well, then you could consider a lease.
Mr. Chair.
Yes,
So,
Commissioner
Mr.
Coring.
Hool, so a shooting range is kind of a different animal. I know that I've had complaints about even the one that's at the fairgrounds, shooting at a Sunday afternoon. Gary Teesey said it was bang, 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 bang on Sunday afternoon, and he drove down there and he talked to, it was the former chief deputy, and says, do you have to do it on a Sunday morning, you know? And so a shooting range is a unique thing. I mean, it's shooting, and it affects the people around there. So why wouldn't we have, we seem to have a public comment period on just about everything we do. Why wouldn't we have a public comment period on this?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Coring, that is the ask that's in your board packet.
Okay. So a 30-day public comment period. So when we give conceptual approval today, then that would go into effect?
That's what the ask is to approve the conceptual terms for the lease. Basically, you're just saying, you're giving a preliminary approval like you might with a preliminary plat. While the club is working out the time period with Minnesota Power for the power line easement, use that time then to put this out for sub-public comment. And if indeed there is trail usage, I think Commissioner Franzine, you had expressed some concern about that. Let's see what the public has to say during that time period. So that is the ask. Preliminary approval of the concept plan, and direct staff to put the draft lease and the map of the shooting range property out for a 30-day public comment period to solicit any neighborhood issues or concerns.
So, Mr. Chair, so
Coring?
how are we going to make sure that the people that might be affected are going to know what's happening? Because if we're depending on them to read the public notice in the Brainerd Dispatch, I just had that same thing happen when we went down to Pine Center and where the ATV trail was on that road. We talked to one guy. Then after we changed it, I heard from 6 other people that said, didn't know anything about it. I said, well, there's a 30-day public comment period. They didn't know anything about it. Is there any way that we can send out postcards or alert these people? I mean, I wouldn't think that would cost very much.
If we were the Planning and Zoning Authority, we would send out a notice to anybody within a quarter mile.
Okay.
And we can certainly do that here as well. It would be a standard fare if we are the Planning and Zoning Authority. We're not here, but I think it's probably a good idea. Why not?
Gary has his hand up, you can't see him.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Gary has his hand up, you can't see him.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was just going to offer just a suggestion. If you guys wanted to look at the map and be comfortable with a buffer, you know, how, like, you want to go out a quarter mile, a half a mile, how far away would you want? You just tell us, and we will send letters to every property owner that's within that radius. That would probably get to the point that Commissioner Coring is concerned about.
Commissioner Coring, do you have a recommendation on sort of how far?
Well, I don't know. I just know that when, you know, when people start shooting and bullets go a long ways, you know, I mean, I don't think it's unheard of for for a bullet to go 1,200 feet, which is about a quarter of a mile, correct? So I would say a half a mile. I guess, I mean, you know, the shooting range is just, you know, it can upset a lot of people because bang, 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 you know. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware and we get their input. Once we get their input, then we can make a decision.
And let's add that to it, that we're going to have postcards sent out within a half-mile range of that.
All right.
Of that piece of property. So yes.
Gary, what would the notice requirement be if this was something that we were the Planning and Zoning Authority for?
It would be all immediate, Mr. Chair, excuse me, there is a little bit different requirement for shooting ranges than our standard, just directly adjacent property owners. I believe there was a
Just as follow our own ordinance.
range. That or, you know, pretty clear today to say quarter or half a mile is gonna really cover a lot of ground, if you will, to ensure that over and above our standard 30-day public comment notifications, you know, that we put in the paper, on our website, We definitely could do either or. I think the quarter mile or half mile is gonna be more, is gonna blanket more folks than what we have in our ordinance. I believe it's like 1,000 feet, something like that, but I can't recall off the top of my head, I apologize.
I would like to go with a half mile.
Okay,
So, okay.
we'll utilize a half a mile for the mailing or the buffer around that piece of property or the 80 acres. So with that, I would look for, oh, excuse me, one second. Administrator Hool, how long would it take us to get set up to gather that information?
Typically, it takes us about maybe 3 days. So,
If we go postcard, it's gonna take us a little bit longer. We probably can just do internal letters a lot quicker than ordering a postcard. So if you guys are okay with that, we'll just send letters, for time's sake, if that's all right.
Seeing a lot of heads nod yes, so that would be acceptable.
Sure.
Mr. Chair.
Hopefully we can get them out by the end of the week.
Do we want to talk to the Irondale and the Trombled Planning and Zonings to make sure they haven't already done this, or to make sure that they're aware we're doing it, just so we're not, this is their jurisdiction, if you will, but I'm supportive of it, I just don't want them to think we're taking over their planning and zoning issues.
If I can, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Mr. Hoag, would it be reasonable to say that we definitely could reach out to both of those boards and say this is for, of course, your guys' information for your decision, and whatever information we get, we'll share with them so that they have even more data,
Yeah, I
even
just
if they're
think we
doing
need to
something?
let them be aware of what we're doing, just so they don't get caught off guard
Sure.
by somebody that's.
Mr. Chair, I would just say that, yes, they're the zoning authority, but we are the ones that are deciding whether or not we're going to grant a lease on that property.
Correct.
And I think that we can set stipulations on the lease agreement, can't we, Mr. Hool?
yes, and in fact, you have a lease in it that has some draft terms that would probably be unique for a lease, but for the fact that this is going to be potentially used as a shooting range, and so we have been more cautious with what the terms are. So you have the draft of that was in your packet, so yes, you can. There is some, of course, risk that the city of Trombled and Irondale Township will end up doing some of the same things. Theirs is for a planning and zoning purpose, ours is for a lease. So, similar but different.
Commissioners, we're okay with that discussion? So I would look for a motion to approve the conceptual plan for a lease, adding the 30-day public comment period to begin, today's the 11th, if we go 7 days out to accommodate the mailing, that's the 18th, so perhaps on the 20th, we can open that up. Would that be appropriate?
I believe so. We'll get it open as early as we can.
So move.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor to accept the conceptual plan in a 30-day comment period by Commissioner Coring, seconded by Commissioner Franzine. I'll take a roll call. Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, I would just like everybody to know that if when we go out for comments and the comments, nobody wants it, that, I don't want them to get ahead of themselves on the lease, just in case it doesn't turn out right either.
Understood. We'll be gathering the data. Next item is land services. It's a scheduled hearing date for a Cartwheel petition in the 2nd Assessment District. Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item was first discussed back in October 15th, 2019 at Committee of the Whole, and we actually set a public hearing date last fall and held a public hearing, but there was nobody in attendance, and what happened was between the time you set the public hearing date and the actual public hearing, and this is for, to consider a cartway, the petitioners for the cartway have to serve all of the landowners that are going to be affected in person. They have to serve them in person, provide them notice, so they have time to, come to the public hearing. And so that was missed. So what we're asking here today is to simply schedule a public hearing for October 13th at a county board meeting, and also to schedule an on-site visit between today and October 15th, which would be a public meeting of the county board to actually view the cartway on site, to examine the cartway path. So today we're just setting those dates for future action.
Mr. Chairman, this is Charles Barnum. I'm an attorney representing the petitioner in this matter.
Go ahead.
I just want to say there was a little confusion last time, and we're just trying to straighten that out. I have been involved in these types of petitions for cartways, mainly with townships, but at least on one other occasion with the county. And oftentimes they will go from, or schedule a special meeting so that they can do the inspection and still comply with the public notice of hearings and have more than 3 commissioners present, and then go right to the hearing where they consider items which you really need to go to the inspection, such as, we know in this case we've corrected the legal description, so there will be, and there will still need a short survey, the amount of damages to be assessed and paid by the petitioners to the owners of the property, and what public use is to be decreed on it. Those are items which you really can't do until after you inspect it. And as soon as you set the date for the hearing, then I've worked with Mr. Simonson. He will get that to me, the order, and then I will have that served.
Okay, so Ryan, we're looking at setting this meeting or this hearing for October 13th, which is one of our regular board meetings, correct?
Correct.
Yet we need to do an on-site visit. And to this gentleman's point, those two should be held sort of back to back with each other. Does that make sense? And if it does, then wouldn't a special meeting be a better approach than trying to go out there at 6 o'clock in the morning to do the visit and then come back at 9 o'clock and have our regular meeting?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think that on-site visit could be scheduled for any time you wish, whether it's a special, as long as it's advertised as a public meeting. And
Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could I just impose one thing?
yes,
As different from most cartways, this one, there are roads constructed on, I would say, 95% of it. So it's not like having to take huge treks through the woods.
understood. So, Ryan, do we need to include a date in this board action for the tour of this property?
We could. I left it open just so I didn't pick a date that didn't work for everyone. So I thought that could be open if the board would like to set a date.
Do we all have a calendar here and we could set a date and time? Ryan, do you have any recommendation on how soon or how delayed you want this to be? Or how close to the October 13th meeting?
I think as long as we visit, I would say prior to October 1st might be a good idea, just so if we see some things on site and we want to make some changes or make some updates, we could do that, but anytime before early October.
So generally speaking, that last week of the month is a light week for all of us. So personally, I have the 28th, 29th, and 30th of September available. Does that, any of those dates work for the other 4 commissioners?
I'm open.
Commissioner Hoag is open. Commissioner Brecken, Commissioner Coring.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Franzine. So I put 3 dates out there. Now let's narrow it down to 1.
How about Wednesday, the 30th?
30th?
That's closer to the 13th than any of the
Okay.
others.
Commissioner Franzine says the 30th, and I'm assuming that that's agreeable to every one of us. What time of day?
Up to you.
Do we want to do that at 9 o'clock in the morning and get it done?
Whatever.
Doesn't make any difference to me.
And would we meet up there, take our individual vehicles, or do we meet here and go in a van, county van?
Well, I don't know if you
If-
3 want to
if-
ride with me, so I'll just drive up there, so.
If we still have
For a
the,
county
the-
commissioner, I'll ride with you.
we still have the distancing, I think that we should, I think we should drive our own individual vans. I know I was on on-site visits last Thursday with the planning commission, and they're all driving their own vehicles because
Okay.
of the pandemic.
So we'll all drive our own vehicles, 9 o'clock, September 30th, for a site visit. You're comfortable with that?
Yep.
Give us the address before then and directions, please.
Schedule it as of the intersection of County Road 105 and this road.
Okay. So you've heard the date and the time?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will speak with Mr. Simonson about getting the correct order signed by a county auditor then.
And do we have to have any special permission from, is it Mr. Unger who owns this property that the cartway's going to go across?
Well, yes, he's probably the one that objects. But we notify all the other cartway, or all the other owners of the property. That's what I've got to do, is get them.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is we don't want to be trespassing if we can't legally do that without some kind of
Well,
notice to
yeah.
him.
As far as I know, you have the right to go out, just like a surveyor would have a right to go on property to survey. That, I guess, would have to be a question for the county attorney, for Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're going to have the authority to do that for a cartway petition. You're operating as the town board, and this happens. But I would suggest, to be on the safe side, Ryan will check with Rocky and make sure.
Very good. All right, so we've scheduled the meeting, so what are we looking for here? Or excuse me, we've scheduled the visit, the site visit, and we're scheduling the hearing. So do we need a motion to firm up both of those? Doesn't ask for a motion here,
It does.
or does?
It's
Okay,
Schedule the on-site, which you just did,
Okay.
and then also the public hearing date.
so I would look for a motion to schedule the on-site public meeting for September 30th at 9 o'clock in the morning for the proposed cartway, and hear all interested parties to be held prior to October 13th, 2021 at a date and time, we already set that as September 30th. And further to schedule a public hearing to be held on October 13th, 2020 at 9:05 a.m. to consider establishing a cartway in unorganized territory, second assessment district.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion.
Second.
Commissioner Hoag seconds the motion. I'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
All right.
Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2 on Land Services list, protecting strategic forest lands near Camp Ripley. Brian?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, if you remember, this item was discussed back on June 9th. The Conservation Fund, Emily Nelson presented the plan or the proposal for the Conservation Fund to acquire some potlatch lands using Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Fund dollars and donate those lands to the county as part of a grant that helps protect strategic forest lands near Camp Ripley. At the time, the item was tabled, and the concern was, at the time, if we were to acquire these lands, they would come with a restriction that no new trails would be allowed. And the staff were given direction to negotiate with the Lessard Sam's Outdoor Heritage Council to see if there's any flexibility with those restrictions. And so what we met with them last week, and they agreed to language of no net gain of new trails. So instead of no new trails, period, we're now allowed, if we get these lands, to create new trails as long as we plant new trees or rehabilitate existing trails for every foot. So there's a no net gain of new trails. So this proposal is coming back today to acquire the acquisition of these parcels with that no net gain of language.
Commissioners, I was on the call for that meeting. I want to compliment Ryan for the way he approached them. We know that's a sensitive subject for them. And I think he and Gary both did a very nice job of helping them understand what our goal is, to have access to trails on there, but not to diminish what their goal is either. And so I think they did a very nice job, and the vote went 7-4 in our favor. I think that's a sign of the effectiveness of the presentation. So I would look for any discussion at this time.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Coring.
So, can I ask Mr. Houle a question? So if we accept this, we're not going to be able to manage this the way we're managing our other 105,000 acres. So, Mr. Houle, do you think that Crow Wing County and our staff does a good job in managing our land here in Crow Wing County?
Of course we do.
Okay. So then why would we as a county board, why would we accept this land and take it when we can't manage it the way we manage all the other 105,000 acres? Why would we do that? I mean, this board is elected by the citizens. This is the citizens of Crow Wing County's land, but yet somebody outside of Crow Wing County is telling us how we can manage it. Why would we do that? And I don't mean to put you on the spot because everybody else is so offended by me, but I thought might as well I can ask you questions.
I think you guys have to figure that out, and it is about the trade-off. The trade-off in preservation value versus your flexibility in managing it the way we want to manage our properties. The one difference in this particular case is motorized use. It still is. When you last talked about this, the lack of ability to have any motorized use really met with opposition on the board. And so what staff did was take that back to Lessard Sam's, try to get them to be a little more flexible with us, to basically say, okay, we still want to have motorized uses there. They wanted preservation value. Can we meet in the middle? The middle was, can we add recreational trails as long as there is no net gain? There is ATV use on those parcels now. If we're going to acquire it, I think right now, we would do nothing. We would leave the ATV use continue the way it is. As long as there's no net gain, that would be appropriate. If we want to move the trails in the future, we could move the trails, but we can't add any new mileage. And that is slightly different than how we manage the rest of the county forest land, where we have it open to ATV use unless designated closed. You know the state has the exact opposite policy. It is closed to ATV use unless posted as open. And that's the clash we run into here, so.
Yeah.
But can I ask another?
Cory.
So once this comes, this is different than the DNR having it. Crow Wing County receives no revenue off of it. Once we accept this, we're managing it, kind of. There's some people in Minneapolis that are telling us how to manage it. And there's no tax revenue coming in from it. So that means that the burden becomes greater on the taxpayers that are here because there's less tax revenue coming in. You might say, well, it's just a small amount. Well, it all adds up if this continues to happen. But yet, I wish I would have checked before, but I know there's probably 8,000 to 9,000 registered ATVers in this county, which is a pretty big block of constituents that now you're telling them that they can't recreate on this piece of property. And how are they going to know when it's a patchwork, when they can recreate on the rest of the 105,000 acres, but now this is set aside and maybe another one is set aside? So I don't know why any county board member would accept property that we can't manage. That means that somebody at Lassard Sam's or somebody down in Minneapolis is saying that they don't trust the elected people here to manage the property that we're managing now. So I don't know. It don't make any sense to me.
Commissioner Brecken?
Mr. Chair, what happens to this land if we don't accept it?
Stays as tax forfeited, I believe.
It's currently,
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brecken, it's currently owned by Potlatch. And if we didn't accept it and the Conservation Fund didn't purchase it, Potlatch may sell it to one owner, they could sell it to multiple owners, or it'd be up to Potlatch.
And I would say that we're not telling ATV people that they can't use this property. I think the way we do it is if it's not posted, they can use that trail. Only if it's posted can they not use the trail. So it's open, but we're still allowing, and we gained that, we moved that dial with the Lassard Sam's group the other day when they allowed us to do the no net gain, because they're, as you know, in the history is that they don't want any trails on there other than walking trails. And again, the presentation allowed them to say, maybe we'll just take a step back and we'll allow this. And maybe this is their test piece of property throughout the state, but they are willing, or they were willing, to allow us this opportunity. And I think we moved the dial significantly with them.
Mr. Chair,
Brecken.
Ryan, maybe you
Commissioner
can ask you this, but how much land this is in Timothy Township, correct?
Correct, there's 320 acres in Timothy and a 40 in Crow Wing Township.
Okay, again, if this goes off the tax rolls, what does that do for revenue for even Timothy Township? Maybe they'd be better off if it was sold actually by Potlatch and correct. Because some of these lands are going to get, it cuts down on the income for even Timothy Township as well as, not as for us.
Yeah, absolutely, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. They're being rural 40-acre parcels. I remember crunching the numbers, and the total taxes on each of those 40s was in the $200, $300, $400 range per year, and that was total. I don't know how much of that was the township portion, but not as much as a nice lake home, certainly, but it's definitely an impact, yeah.
Mr. Chair, I've had some discussion with some townships where their concern gets to be is how much land comes off the tax rolls within their townships. And I think it'd be interesting to see what that percent is in a township like Timothy.
Commissioner Franzine.
Well, I always have reservations when we come to doing this after what we went through with the Northwoods property. And I don't want to take it if we can't manage it like we manage our other lands. I mean, we do a fabulous job on our other 105 acres and 105,000 acres. And I can't see any reason why that shouldn't carry through to this.
Thank you. Commissioner Hogue?
Mr. Chair, Brian, we still have the ability to harvest on this property, right?
Correct.
So the revenue, actually, then, it's a positive for us as a county.
Correct. That would help offset some of that tax-based loss. The timber sale revenues would go to the county, partially back to the townships as
So
well.
basically, we manage this just like we do the other 105,000 acres, with the exception of the caveat with the no net gain trail.
Exactly, yep.
Well, Commissioner, sorry.
Commissioner
We,
Francine.
we would still be able to, even if we, well, I guess if it was sold to individual property owners, we wouldn't probably get the timber sales, but at this point, being that it is tax forfeited, we still get the timber sales money, so.
In theory, if Potlatch sells it privately
Yeah,
to a
then we
private
wouldn't.
individual, we probably won't get the forest management portion of it, potentially.
But if people put up houses, we're going to get a lot more in tax
To
revenue.
get the taxes, you're absolutely right. We would potentially lose the access for the ATV group to be able to traverse across that property. And, you know, they're a strong group at the Natural Resources Committee. I'm not sure how they would feel about not having access. And we are about, and we have to remember this, that one of our biggest revenues is recreation in our county.
Right.
So if we don't have connectivity on some of these trails, and particularly in the motorized world, they need miles. You know, if you're a road biker like me, I don't need miles. I just need a rest stop somewhere real quick. But for the motorized group, the snowmobilers, the ATVs, the side-by-sides and that, they want lots of miles because they can travel lots of miles and they don't get exhausted like old guys like me. So, Commissioner Franzine.
Well, and on this property, I don't have a picture of where the trails are. I don't know that we might not need an extra quarter of a mile, and that concerns me. The no net gain is,
Ryan, does this property have any connectivity to existing ATV trails?
Not existing ATV trails. There is a snowmobile trail that runs across it, but not ATV trails. I'd also, if I could, Mr. Chair, I'd add that a bigger picture, this fits into our land asset plan of where we'd like to acquire lands that are adjacent to or right in the mix of big blocks of county land, and this fits perfect for that. On the other hand, we're selling these isolated parcels, just like the Greenwood Lake parcel that was landlocked, isolated, sell that to the DNR. And so that's why this kind of fits in a good category for an acquisition for us for a land management standpoint, I guess you could say.
Any further discussion?
Excuse me,
Commissioner
Mr.
Brecken.
Chair, has Timothy Township weighed in on this at all?
I haven't heard from Timothy Township. I sent them the notification a while back of this project, but I haven't heard back. I don't know if Emily has.
Mr. Chair and council members, I have not heard back from Timothy Township.
Now, if there's no further discussion, I would look for a motion to approve the acquisition of Potlatch property located at, and there's the legal description, authorizing the chair and the county administrator to sign the land protection donation agreement.
I'll make the motion.
Commissioner Hoag makes the motion. Look for a second. Second call for a second. Motion dies for lack of a second.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. County Sheriff is not here. County Attorney's not here. County Administrator.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, today I passed around a copy of a map of 2 potential broadband projects that we may wish to consider as part of the CARES Act allocation. So we have one, these are both fairly small projects. One of them is in the Dell and Scottsdale neighborhood up in Nisswa. The other one is outside Crosby on County Road 11 to the east of State Highway 6. The cost of each of those projects would be $90,450 for the Scottsdale and Dell one, and $112,080. So it's a little over $200,000 for both of these additional ones. You may recall we have a $1 million contingency, and so if you're interested in advancing any more broadband projects, you have two for your consideration here. You don't have to, but you can.
Commissioner Franzine.
Mr. Hould, is this still CTC?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, I believe, going to get some proposal from an SCI broadband that was out of Aiken. Some of you have talked to that gentleman as well. They may be willing to accept the risk that the CARES Act funds aren't eligible for this. So far, I've talked to every one of the other major companies that I can find, and none of them want to accept that risk. So yes, these are both CTC projects again.
To be clear, we'd be using the contingency fund that we set up to add this to the broadband portion or bucket.
That's correct.
Any other discussion?
I would make the motion to go forward with these two projects. through
Commissioner
CTC,
Franzine.
with the realization that they will accept the, if they aren't
Risk
funded by
factor?
CARES, they will accept the risk.
Second.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion to accept these two projects. Commissioner Hoag seconds the motion. Roll call. Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you also have an at-large vacancy on the Natural Resources Advisory Committee. You may recall that we talked about this last time, and so we did advertise based on your direction. We got 5 applicants: Chris Pence, Mike Duvall, Daryl Shannon, Randy Moser, and Michelle Berger. And so I'll put it forward for your consideration. Would you like to conduct interviews? You have done that once before. Or do you want to select from among the 5? It's up to you.
Mr. Chair, I was prepared when I was the chair to appoint Chris Pence today, and I had informed him of that over the weekend. He did go check with Bowser to see if it was okay if he do that. But that's your decision, but that's what I was going to do. I think we know Chris Pence very well, and I thought he would be a good addition to the Natural Resources Advisory Committee.
Any other commissioners have opinions?
Mr. Chair, I think
Mr. Hoag?
if we've got 5 people interested, I think it would be in our best interest to interview all 5 and to make this a fair process.
Commissioner Brecken, anything to say?
No, I would, I guess, I would understand that the interviewing process could be valuable.
Commissioner Franzine?
I believe we all know Chris. I don't care what we do. I think he would be a good addition.
As the chair, I believe that we should give each of these individuals an opportunity to come and speak to us, so I would like to set up the interviews to interview each of them and hear what they feel are their qualifications and their interest for this position. It is an at-large position, so it's not unique to any one of our districts.
Mr. Chairman, can we do that at like a personnel committee meeting?
I believe we can.
We'll have them call in, and you guys can ask whatever questions you want, and then it'll be on the next board meeting after that for your consideration.
Okay, so then the committee, because of personnel, would be Commissioner Barrows, Commissioner Coring, and Commissioner Hoag.
So that's
I mean, it's up to you guys.
I would prefer to have all of us there to represent the board so that we get an opinion from everybody concerning each of these individuals. If not, we would put it on the next board meeting when we're all there.
Could do that too.
And we would conduct the interviews in the room here.
I would suggest, and I was going to suggest, we're kind of backing up on our agendas for the Committee of the Whole. We're booking out into October already. And it's primarily because the COVID stuff kind of just sucks you in, and then all your other stuff is piling up. So I would suggest having the board consider holding a special Committee of the Whole meeting on August 1st That's a Tuesday? It's an open Tuesday?
August 1st?
I think we're past August
I think we're
1st.
past that.
I'm sorry, September 1st, I think. Now let me double check. September 1st.
So that's a Tuesday. Again, my agenda is open that day. I'm not sure if we could, Commissioner Hoag?
Well, I do have, I believe, a closing on a property that day, so I don't know what time, but, you know, depending on the time that we set it up, I would be available, but
Commissioner Brecken, do you know what time that closing is?
I do not yet.
Your availability? Because you have
Yeah,
to
I'd be available.
you have to be there also, correct?
We can work around this. We can reschedule.
Commissioner Coring? Are you available?
You said it, I'll be there.
Commissioner Franzine?
I feel the same way. If you said it, I'll be there. I don't really think it's necessary, but I'll be there if you said it.
September 1st, 9 o'clock. We'll have a special committee of the whole meeting.
Mr. Chair, will that be the only item on that agenda, or will other people be able to come with other issues that have been backed up?
I think the idea would be to start to address some of these other issues so that we can
Catch up.
get them taken care of. So yes, there could be other issues on that agenda.
So how long would you like these interviews to be? There's 5 of them. When we set them up, can we give them a time frame? 15 minutes, half hour, 10 minutes? What would you like? Because that will determine the rest of the agenda, how long their interviews will take.
We do have currently letters from each of them, so I think 5 minutes ought to be enough time for them to add anything that they didn't feel they addressed in their letter to us. So that would be what? That'd be a total of about 25 minutes?
Okay,
That
so
would be-
from 9 to 9:30, we'll have interviews?
Yes,
And then anything else that we might need to catch up on?
yes.
In
And
the
that will
committee
be
of the
a
whole.
tight timeline. They're
I
5
wouldn't
minutes.
schedule anything until 10.
Well, I will hold them to the 5 minutes, Commissioner Franzine.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I also have enclosed in your packet an appointment to the Serpent Lake Sanitary Sewer District Board of Directors. I'm going to pull that up. That is to appoint Joshua Voller to replace Mike Doman as the City of Deerwood rep on the Serpent Lake Sanitary Sewer District Board of Directors for a term expiring December 31st of '22. And further, a certificate of appreciation is to be prepared for Mr. Doman for his service to Crow Wing County. Mr. Chair, that, because it is the sanitary sewer district, that should have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Franzine makes the
Second.
motion. Commissioner Coring seconds. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Brecken?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag?
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine?
Aye.
Commissioner Coring?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes.
And, Mr. Chair, I was not at the senior management team meeting yesterday, but Debbie was, and so I'm going to ask her to come forward and give you an update.
Mr. Chair, board members, we did have a senior management team meeting yesterday. We, of course, received a COVID update from the Public Health Department and Emergency Management Division. We heard some discussion on the fact that public health is working in close conjunction with the local school districts to help advise them with their plans as they look to open up the school districts again for the coming year. So one of the things that had been questioned was whether or not each of the districts has to look at their own individual numbers or if it's county-wide numbers based on the direction from the Department of Health and Department of Education, and it is county-wide numbers that we are looking at. We have seen some spikes in our numbers over the last week or so that are starting to tail off a little bit now. That rate of increase is going down, and basically what we're thinking is we're catching up to that 4th of July weekend that we have seen that spike that had occurred at that point in time. We also talked about the CARES Act funding from the standpoint of We have finished up working, almost finished up working on the FAQs that will be part of the applications for the nonprofit and the business relief applications that you have authorized. We are ready to get those put out in the next week, so that I believe opens August 17th. We will be ready for those applications to go live at that point in time. That application period will be for about a 30-day period for the applicants to apply for their relief processes at that point in time. We will be bringing you some additional information at our next budget committee with regard to the county COVID costs, those costs that we've been compiling that are not the reimbursement-based ones that we've already identified. These are costs that are still related to COVID, but we're outside of that emergency declaration piece that we need board action to approve those purchases that need to be made yet at this time. We have created a form that we've asked departments to complete so that it lists what the expense is, if it was a budgeted or unbudgeted expenditure, what the rationale for COVID is. That is part of our tracking process for any potential audits that are going to come up because of this. That information will all be presented to you. We're hoping to have that for you at the next budget committee meeting here in the next couple of weeks, and then board action of that on your September 11th board meeting.
Was it 11th?
I don't know, now I'm lost with the 1st and the August and whatever day that might be. Additionally, with regard to budget committee, we did review the preliminary budget of what has been submitted by departments. We had discussion at the senior management team that we know there is still work that needs to be done on that preliminary budget, that there is a need for our departments to go back and take a look again to make sure that they are sharpening their pencils and that that information is being brought forward for you at the budget committee. We have stopped any opportunity for departments to make changes in the budget module at this time. So we have a baseline that will be provided to you at the budget committee meeting, and then we will be working forward from there at that point in time. I know we were rescheduling budget committee due to a couple of different things, and I'm not sure if we've landed on the next date and time yet. Friday at 1. Okay, perfect. So we do have that coming up, and we will be providing that information for you at that point in time. Additionally, we talked about the fact that there is some training available for our staff to look at how we can make the website, the Crow Wing County website, more accessible to all visitors of the website. If you know, there is some opportunities there that documents that are created, particularly in a PDF format, are not always necessarily readable by a screen-readable software, some of the other things that we need to look at. We are required to have an accessible website, and that definition of accessible is quite open to interpretation. Particularly the Microsoft products, they do have some built-in tools that help with accessibility of documents on websites, but if we don't know how to use them, it is often more difficult to retrofit a document than build it the right way from the beginning. So we do have an arrangement with the Minnesota Counties Computers Cooperative that we would be able to send some staff for training with regard to Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, and Microsoft PDF documents and Microsoft PowerPoint documents to help them understand how to create those. So we did encourage departments to look at particularly their web editors, the people who are making those documents available on our website, so that we can have the information available to as many of the public as absolutely possible. And then finally, we also talked about the fact that our TrackStar tool is that employee dialogue tool that we use for performance management, and the need for managers and senior managers to be sure that they are auditing the comments and the notes that are being taken in that TrackStar document to make sure that we are creating that two-way dialogue between the employee and the manager, both from the standpoint of setting those goals as well as how that performance is progressing throughout the year. So we talked about ways of making sure that we are auditing that information and having those discussions as well. We also talked about the fact that our LEAD program with our high potential leaders is going to be kicking off in February. And as part of that, we talked about the need to get some of our newer hires, newer employees on board with our Insights Profile program, which is that color wheel that we talk about that really helps with team dynamics and knowing how to communicate amongst our teams. So we will be looking to offer some of that here in the next coming months as well. That was our discussion, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Debbie. Any questions? Anything else? Any additional information or issues from the board? I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hoag. Roll call vote. Commissioner Brecken.
Aye.
Commissioner Coring.
Aye.
Commissioner Franzine.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoag.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. That's your goodness.